Welcome to What It Takes to Lead, a podcast about Mike Sterlacci's faith, family, friendships, and business lessons learned over 40 plus years of selling insurance and building a rapid growth insurance agency in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm one of your hosts, Lee First, and today I'm joined with my co-host and producer, Charlie Hooper, and of course, CoVerica founder and chairman, Mike Sterlacci. Guys, good morning. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great. Good morning.
Everybody have a good Labor Day weekend?
Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah. It was nice.
I fought the sun on a boat and I lost. And so that was part of why I scheduled this today, is if we're going to be on camera, I needed to get the pink off me. So I was just like, you know what? I got a good base tan. I don't need suntan lotion.
You wore a cap, I hope.
Oh, I did. Yeah, definitely so.
We could have fixed it in post. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, turn the tent way down.
Yeah.
So, well, something I wanted to do a little different today, and that we've done in our past episodes is I wanted to, a little behind baseball here is typically what we do with the podcast is we'll get kind of a script together, questions we're going to hit, things we want to kind of cover. And so I wanted today to be a little less scripted and a lot more conversational, and also hoping just to have a little bit of fun. And really what I'm thinking here is that I'm gonna rapid fire questions at Mike. Some of these questions are going to be short, kind of funny. Some of them might require a little bit of dialogue and exchange. Some of this is going to be business and entrepreneurship related, and some of it's not. And but Mike, at the end of the day, these are questions we've always wanted to ask you.
Oh, good grief. Okay.
So, and just full disclosure, you haven't seen any of these questions.
I have not.
There's no script. There's nothing in front of you other than a notepad. And and real quick, just as a quick note for our listening audience, like I said, Mike hasn't seen any of these. We might get some pauses while he thinks of an answer, and that's okay. So for this,
we can edit that out. So.
Yeah, there you go. So I was just going to say we ask for your patience.
If I have to leave the room and go look up a word or something.
Well, no, that was what's funny is there was a podcast of Lex Friedman interviewing Elon Musk, and it's like this famous moment where he has this really deep, profound question. And the question is when do you think we'll have a man on Mars? And there's a 21-second pause.
And they left it in?
They left it in. And it was so cool because you just sit there and you can look at his brain working.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that amazing?
And it's just, it is like 21 seconds. He was like, and of course, in his Elon Musk, in the best version, 5 years, worst version, 10. And it's just, and it was just like he was so like hyper focused on it. And so I think it's okay to have some of that thought.
So this will be a contrast to that.
Yeah, a little bit. So, all right. They're in no particular order. They go all over the place. So some of these I pulled out of other podcasts I like. Some of these came from my wife. Some of these came from Charlie. Some of these came from me. What is the best advice you can give to new married couples?
Oh, wow. That's very interesting because tonight I'm going to be having dinner with Dashiell, which is Heidi's boyfriend. And I asked her, what do you want?
Hold on, Heidi's boyfriend?
Did I say Heidi?
You did.
Yeah.
No,
I meant a little slip there.
Well, because I'm like, there's other issues going on with Heidi and all that stuff. No,
I didn't know that
Samantha.
about Mike.
Samantha's boyfriend, Dashiell. He's a nice young man. And so I asked Samantha, what do you want me to talk to him about? Because he asked to have dinner with me. I don't think this is to ask for her hand in marriage. I think it's just to get to know me better and for me to get to know him better. And so, and also Heidi and I have been marriage mentors. We haven't done it in quite a while, but we were selected at our church to get involved in that. And we went actually downstairs to Strong Marriages and went through their course to do that. So it's a question that I have been asked. And the simplest answer is, you got to get on the same faith page. I look at right now, Heidi's father, 84 years old in Bogota, Colombia, dying of pancreatic cancer, and he's not a believer. And he said something which is what I have said many, many times, that when people get to the very end of their lives, what do they want? They want to be around people that love them, that they love. Mm-hmm. So here he is, an atheist who makes fun of Heidi's faith, and probably mine as well. But he says, I want to get well enough so we can all get together.
Yeah.
Well, why is that? because at the end, you realize what was really important that you ignored along your life. So in a marriage, you're going to be facing so many hard times that you can't conceive of. And what will hold you together? What will give you the ability to face the fights? One is to have a relationship with a spouse that you know unequivocally loves you, warts and all, and vice versa. Don't want to mention the name because I don't want to embarrass her, but a good friend of ours gets frustrated with her husband. He's on the spectrum. Their son's on the spectrum, and here's this beautiful woman who's, didn't sign up for this, and it's she's dealing with it in a loving way, and they're doing all the right things, the right school, and all that stuff. And I asked her, I said, "Now you get real frustrated with your husband and your son, correct?" And she says, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Now, don't you get frustrated with yourself? I mean, there are times when you're going to be upset that you didn't do something, you want to lose weight, you want to work out more, things about yourself that you frustrate yourself with, right? Right. Well, when a man and a woman become one, does it make sense that you're not going to get frustrated with them like you get frustrated with yourself? And that's why you get frustrated with them. But what pulls you through everything is your common faith. We don't really look at that. And in today's world, people are just, for a guy, it's, at least with me, it's more the lust factor. When I was young, and so, I want to get married, I want to have a family and all this, not really thinking about what does it mean. I told Samantha, will the person that you marry work 2 or 3 extra jobs if you have a special needs kid and you have to stay home? That's love.
Right.
If you have that kind of relationship with somebody else that no matter what happens, they're going to stand by you and you're going to stand by them, that's what's important. Well, I was talking to another friend of mine whose daughter was married for many years, finally got divorced. It was an abusive relationship. And she knew when she was getting married that it was a mistake.
Wow.
But because of the peer pressure, because of societal issues, because everybody's happy on Facebook and I want to have this beautiful wedding and it doesn't matter that we're having sex and we're living together, I'm going to wear a white dress. I mean, everything has been so marginalized to self that we forget that a marriage are 2 people becoming one.
Right. And you're cleaving your old family and starting a new one.
Right. And then people struggle
hard.
with that.
Yeah.
It's very hard because your parents go to a situation where you honor them. But make no mistake, with me and Heidi, it's God first, Heidi second, or Mike second, and then family, and then friends, and then work, and then church.
Right.
Church is in the back end, then community behind that.
Right.
And it's in that order. So if you don't want to be a believer, okay, then you better make sure that the person that you're marrying shares your values, because that's what will break down a relationship. Once the lust part's satisfied, once the issues are satisfied, once you have a house, once you have the things that you thought were so important, then you're going to start saying, my life sucks.
Right.
In my first marriage, I remember after a couple of years, I said, "Is this it?"
Yeah.
And then I was going to fix it. We're going to fix it by having kids, which was doubling down on stupidity. And then after 12 years of marriage, we said, you know what, this really isn't working. I bought into I don't owe my happiness to this, and I can still be a good dad and all this other BS, which it is. And so I followed what I wanted.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank God I met Heidi. And so now 32, going on 33 years later, we are more in love today than I've ever been. I mean, I've never had anybody love me like her, ever, including my parents.
I'm going to stop you right there because it actually jumps into another question. What was the moment you knew Heidi was the one?
That's a great question. I think when I look back about the progression of everything, is I was friends with Heidi, because we worked together at Century. And I think I met her, I don't know, she was like 25 when I first met her. But she was a very caring person, and she had a great sense of humor, and she had a sparkle in her eye, and she was very enthusiastic. And at work at Century, I mean, I was so obnoxious Gary can attest to this, and I would just do goofy things, and a lot of people didn't like me, which nothing's changed in those scores, but she was always really kind. Well, she went on to work someplace else, and we stayed in touch. We used to have a group of people getting together. There was Jeff Goldade, Scott Forey, Diana Rhodes, Marty Meredith. There was a group of us that would get together. And so when Pam came home one day and said, our marriage isn't that great, and if it doesn't get any better, then we probably ought to think about a divorce. And I thought, do you realize what you just said? And, once you can't unring the bell.
Yeah.
And so we just were into that modern, well, we can still raise the kids and everything will be fine. And to this day, we're only 2 miles apart. So the kids are grown. Mike's 40, Chris is 36. But so then what happened is I went on a blind date, and oh my gosh, that was the most horrible experience. And Heidi thought that was so funny when we'd all get together and stuff. And she laughed and says, now you know what it's like in the dating world. Because I used to tease her. She was dating a guy named Sam. I called him Sam the Sham. There was Jake. I said Jake the Snake. And I was having great fun picking on her when she was dating these guys. Well, now, it turned, and now it's me dating. And I said, oh my God, this is awful. And so it wasn't long where I said, do you want to go out? Yeah, I said, I know I'm jeopardizing a good friendship here, but we were friends first. I liked her as a person. We had worked together. I understood her. I'd met some of her family, and she was a nice person. And so, the dating pool scared me to death, and so we started dating. Well, she would openly share with me her feelings, her thoughts, and she was so vulnerable. And just something was evoked in me to where I felt this need to protect her. Because I'm a hard ass. There's not much I fear in life. And so we got very close, and the rest is history. So I think that what it was her personality was so different than mine that actually I could see how it complemented mine. She's very much a nurturer. She's very, very kind. She's needs, in my mind, she needs somebody to look after her so that she doesn't get ground up by what's out there. But she made me feel good about myself. She listened to what I had to say. She would answer my questions when asked. She wouldn't override me with her opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I think about when I listen to Dr. Laura Schlesinger, she'll read letters of what a man's looking for in a woman, and she checked off all those boxes. I know just by the look in her face if I've done something that was stupid or that upset her. She doesn't have to beat me up with it.
Right.
Now she says, I'm Mrs. No Fun, because she came into the marriage with Mike and Chris, and that was not easy. And so she would always say no. The first thing that she'll say about anything of my ideas is no. And then I have to stop and slow down and explain it to her. So I guess the cleanest way to answer that is she evoked in me a feeling that I wanted to protect her, that I knew that she would be a kind of person that would nurture me and love me, warts and all.
Yeah.
And now she wasn't a believer, by the way, when we first married. And it's a whole nother funny story about how I started getting serious about my faith again because I was born and raised Catholic. And I pretty much, I'm driving, baby. I know how to make the life work and everything else. And so when I started realizing, I've got all these problems with 2 kids and a prior marriage and building a business and all the aches and pains that go along with all that. So I'm frustrated, and I realized I better get serious about my faith because that's the only place I'm going to find answers for the kind of challenges I'm having. So I went to Heidi and I said, you need to get serious about faith. We can't be dawdling on this stuff anymore. And she says, oh, it's what? And so a dear friend of ours convinced her to join BSF, Bible Study Fellowship, because the way she got it, and this is where you want to use third parties to help you carry your messages through friends, family, etc. was that she said, Heidi, if you go to this Bible study fellowship, the BSF, they have an entry level for the children. So they have daycare. And she says, oh, that's great. She says, but it's not just daycare. They'll be studying the same thing that you're studying, but at their level.
That's cool.
And it's very cool.
Yeah.
And so that got Heidi's attention. And that was, good grief, that was probably 27 years ago. And she's in BSF pretty much like 14 years she's gone to it. And so she's become a real, kind of like a Ruth, very mature in her faith. And so we can talk at a level, like I said, with her father is dying of pancreatic cancer, we can talk about it at a level that is not just freaking out that he's dying.
Right.
We understand that it's part of the process. That's a long answer to a simple question.
No, that's perfect. I'm going to switch gears real quick. Last meal. What are you eating? Who's at the table, alive or dead?
Oh, let's see. Well, of course, I'd love to be around Jesus just to say, what was your plan here? I mean, but now, if we want to go with more realistic, it would be like, say, Churchill would be really cool. Lincoln would be cool. Washington would be cool. Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. These I would love to challenge these deep thinkers that would articulate their perspective about things, but throw in the other curveballs that come.
Right.
That makes perfect sense as long as these things play out a certain way.
Right.
Now, as far as what we would eat, gosh, probably fried chicken.
See, I didn't know if you were going to go Italian and it's like, we do the 7 fishes, or is it?
No, the fried chicken, because fried anything is terrible for yourself, but there's just something about that bone-in chicken that I like it.
Oh, I love that. Does pineapple ever belong on a pizza?
Yes, it does.
Oh my gosh.
No, wait. Now, that's not how I would order it, but I remember on Blue Bloods, the Janko wanted to order pizza with pineapple on it, and Tony, who was he is so Italian. I mean, he makes me look like I'm not. I mean, he is just so Italian. And she said she wants a pizza with pineapple. And he says, you order a pizza with pineapple on it and you're dead to me. Anyway, so she does some heroic things in the show. And so at the very end, to show her that he really approves of what she did, he brings her a slice of pizza with pineapple on it. So yeah, but it's a sweet and sour to it. But no, that's not what, typically I order, pepperoni sausage and mushrooms and black olives, but I won't turn down a pizza with pineapple on it.
Yeah, to me, it's got to have some kind of like ham or bacon, or it's got to have some kind of pork on it. But so this was a Charlie question.
Oh yeah. So I know you talked a little bit about, you grew up Catholic and then you kind of got more serious in your faith later on. But tell us about the period of life where you weren't so serious about your faith, or maybe you questioned it.
Oh, you mean the first 30 years?
Yeah.
No, I was a rock and roller, dope smoking, skirt chasing hippie in Austin in the 70s, and
relatable. Yeah,
it was, and some of the best memories I had in college was in my dorm, where I had a guy that was a philosophy major, and so we would have really deep conversations as we were getting stoned. And to me, with college, back in those days, I knew that I needed the document. I needed a degree. So I went radio, TV, film, because it was entertaining and I liked it. And it was something I could really get me through college. So let's go way back. So when I was a kid, if you're Italian, most likely you're going to be Catholic. Mexicans are Catholic, Italians are Catholic. You really don't get a vote in it. And so I was always, I went to a Catholic school, and so we had mass every morning. You're going to go there, genuflect, you kneel and all that. Smells and bells, we used to call it. And I'm old enough to where there was Vatican I. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about. There was Vatican I, Vatican II, and they changed everything. Specifically, they used to do the liturgy and all of it in Latin. Mm-hmm. Well, as a kid, I thought that that was a language where they're talking directly to God, and I couldn't know what it was, because in Catholicism, it's somewhat of a caste system, and I don't want to upset anybody, but it's essentially you're supposed to do everything through a priest.
Right.
Well, that's not biblically sound, but that's what it's been, and I understand it because I learned this from Tim Warren, who went to DTS. He did a beautiful job explaining to me what pastors go through at DTS, which is first you need to understand the history of when the scripture was written, Old Testament, New Testament. What was happening? You better really know what's going on. Study history, secular history, as well as the religious from the Bible. Then you figure out what's the transcending message that was proposed. Mm-hmm. And from the transcending message, then you apply it in current times. That's what the DTS teaches, the Dallas Theological Seminary, and that's what most good pastors do, is they take relevancy from Old and New Testament and they put it in current events. So as a kid, I was going to Catholic school, and I realized, I see Jesus hanging from the cross because they celebrate that he died for us, whereas the Protestants celebrate the ascension. And that's why they just have the cross without Jesus hanging on it. So I'm looking up at Jesus, and every morning, and I'm thinking that the nuns and the priests that I'm dealing with, they certainly don't get what you're talking about, because we're not on the same page. And so I always maintained a kind of a distance of saying this is more complex than what they're teaching in like the third grade. So because of the, confessional, you go Friday night and your sins are forgiven. Well, that means as long as you die Friday evening, you're in good shape, kind of a thing. And I just would see problems with it. And I actually was asked not to return in the 6th grade from the Catholic school, which shouldn't come as a shock to anybody. But they had me 5 years and they said enough. And so then I went to public school.
You asked too many questions.
Well, yeah, I
got in trouble with Church of Christ because I was like, hold on, there's some stuff in here. I don't think. I was just like, I know you're wearing different cloths right now.
Yeah.
Aren't you working in the church on a Sunday?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. And they don't have good answers, or they don't even want to answer it because you're a punk or whatever. I don't know. So anyway, now that's not to say that there aren't a lot of Christians that are Catholics, because there are. But if you make it more of a cultural thing than a spiritual thing, that's where I think there's a divide. Okay, so then I go to the public school and endure that, and then go to college and all that. And I'm always seeking. There's got to be something more to life than this. So I really didn't get serious about my faith until, the things start to become so difficult that I realize I can't handle it. When we had a bunch of lawsuits going on, I just felt, a person that was a partner in the company, I gave him 25% of the company. We parted ways. And then he wanted to sue us. He wanted $250,000 and at this point we're basically bankrupt. Anyway, so just one hardship after another, and I'm hollering at God saying, you put me here. What am I supposed to do? And that's where you hear the peace which passes understanding kind of came over me, and I got more and more serious about my faith. So what it was like when I was younger was, I had a lot of fun. I chased a lot of girls, but there was always the next day. It wasn't fulfilling. Experimented with a lot of drugs, and I got to where I thought, I don't like this. I don't want to escape. I like my life, like John Candy. I like my friends like me. I like me. That's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I know we had a text thread, and I came to the realization. I was like, John Candy just left us way too soon.
Yeah, he did.
If you were born, if you lived anywhere in the early to mid '80s, like he was like second father.
Yeah,
You know?
just look up some of his movies because they're well worth watching. But did that answer your question?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it
it did,
wasn't. It's listen. I played in a band. I had a lot of great times and a lot of good things that happened. But it's like there was always the morning after. There's always, okay, I did that, and I see that now in adulthood. I have a lot of friends that they're buying the Bentleys. They're getting private planes, and yet you see that they're not really content. And when will that happen? And like Rockefeller, how much is enough? A little bit more.
Right.
Or when I listened to Munger 3 weeks before he died, said if I had started earlier, I could have been a trillionaire. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, you really think that's something worth hanging your hat on?
Yeah. That's the scoreboard you're chasing.
Yeah, thank you. That's a better way to say it.
So outside of business, what keeps you up at night?
Outside of business, well, I would say people that I love, that I care about, that just don't know how to get out of their own way. It is so many of the problems that we have are self-imposed. And I've said this many times to people, they don't allow themselves, and this is the tragedy of life. We've talked about the friendships of use, pleasure, and virtue. You really need to develop relationships with people that truly love you for who you are, that you love who they are, warts and all, so that they can help give a course correction to you. Because I see people that get caught up in things and they just can't get out of it. They are where they are because they don't know how to get out of it. If you keep that all between your ears because you're afraid of sharing it with somebody, or you don't want somebody to make fun of you, or fill in the blank of why you don't reach out, that's a prison. Because we are not designed to live alone. That was the big push that I have in the problem with remote work. I joke and say you can't get pregnant over the internet, right? Well, why is that? It's because you got to have contact. Why do you have to have contact? So that you can have intimacy. Why do you need intimacy? Because that's what life was designed to be. It's not how much you have. It's not what you're doing. It's the people and the time that you spend with people that you care about. Because there'll come a time when you start to, I'm losing friends now because I'm 70 and a lot of my friends are, they say that typically you'll have influence in friends 20 years older or 20 years younger. Beyond that, it's problematic. So I'm having friends die off and spouses die off of friends. And so when I talk to them, I mean, they're those people that their whole world was built around what they're doing and their spouse. When they lose that spouse, now they're in a free fall. And they say that I heard this, I think it was Dr. Laura Schlesinger that said it, that the better the marriage was for a man, the quicker they'll get remarried when they lose their spouse. Because there's so much
yearning for wanting that back.
Right. And that's usually when they make some pretty horrendous mistakes.
Yeah.
So
I live in a neighborhood full of those.
Yeah.
It's men in their 60s and women in their 30s.
Oh, the trophy wives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
What the heck do you talk about after the sex? I mean, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so that's, hopefully that answered the question.
Throw some of these out to try.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about getting older. You're 70 now. You just had a birthday recently.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So you got however many years left. What's still on the bucket list?
Good question. One thing I want to admit to that I'm kind of pleased with myself. To plan a surprise birthday party for me, Heidi would tell you, is virtually impossible. But this time, I didn't allow myself to even think about it. So I was genuinely surprised with the cake that we had and then the dinner party we had. I was genuinely surprised because I wouldn't allow myself to go down and start analyzing what's going on, what's different, So what's left on the bucket list is for me to get to a place to where I can remove expectations. I think that my whole life has been a drive to accomplish, make certain things happen, make certain that CoVerica would flourish. Well, it did. Have diversification with other companies, did that. Have enough money to where I don't have to worry about money anymore, did it. So all of those things have been accomplished. I have excellent health at 70, for right now. I do have severe arthritis, I found out. I went yesterday and had an MRI and a sonogram on this finger because it's like bothering me. I don't do well with pain. I'm a horrible patient. So I'm thinking there's got to be something wrong here. And so finally a year of dealing with these awkward, and so the sonogram guy looked at me, he says, you got severe arthritis in this hand. He says, we'll see what the MRI says, but that's pretty much what it is. Well, let me tell you, boys and girls, once you have arthritis, you just deal the symptoms. They can't fix. I mean, you can do joint replacement, but you're trading one problem for another. Right. So anyway, this is it. So my bucket list now is I'm working on eliminating expectations and just letting life fold out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How will you know when you get there?
I'll be like Paul, anxious for nothing. Let's look at kids. When Jesus says, come to me like children, I mean, every Christmas when Mike and Chris were little kids, they would be just as happy playing with the Tupperware and boxes that the gifts came in as the gifts themselves. What happens to us as we leave that state? I mean, kids, I love little kids because they're just so, their shoes are on wrong. They don't want to change the diaper. They are living in the moment. They're having fun, and you got to fight them to go to sleep, and then they go to sleep, and then they wake up and they're ready to do it all over again. That is cool. So being more childlike with life, being more impressed and amazed with what's around me, just the beauty that's out there. We go to Florida like about 4 months of the year, just looking at the water constantly changing, the water going in, going out, looking for the dolphins, friends, companionship, just letting it happen. That would be the contentment to where I don't get stressed. My concierge doctor said we were looking at healthy lifestyle. Mediterranean diet is the best, and walking and working out and core and weights and all these things. But he said something interesting to me. He says, with your wife, don't discuss anything that is controversial, say past 8 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
He says, because I'm telling you, it affects your sleep. And that's so true. I mean, Heidi and I, in the early days when we would have arguments, I was of that, it says never go to bed angry. Well, we're going to fight this out. And so finally we just exhausted. and then I realized something very important about my wife and her abilities. And she can park something and then sleep on it, and the next day she's good. I can't do that. But I've learned from her, there's a stopping point. Okay, let's park this, and we'll deal with it tomorrow if we need to at all.
Nice. Love it.
There's a thing you said in there that kind of relates to a question when you were talking about going to Florida. What are you still curious about?
Oh, my goodness. A lot. I am fascinated with the why, because I try to stay in the why world, and I pretty much am in the why world. Why do people do what they do? Why do things happen the way they happen? The sayings like, we end up with the government we deserve. There's a lot of truth and wisdom in that statement. Why is there so much divisiveness? Why are people willing to be, in some ways, influenced by others and the internet? What causes, or why do mob mentalities exist? People will do things in a mob that they would never do individually. So I look at things like that, and I always wonder, why are those things happening, and what, if anything, can be done about it?
There's a lot of variance in the human condition.
That's right. And so that fascinates me, is to look at it. Now, not to say, like I love the Hoover Institute and listen to Goodfellows. And I was listening to Mick Masterson here recently. He's being interviewed. He wrote a book about his year with Trump. And what I love about intellectuals Some people are, why do you like intellect? Well, it's because they look at life differently. They don't get caught up in the low-end impulse response. So he, in this new book that he wrote, At War with Ourselves, I believe is the title, he's talking about, he did a comparison of Trump to Johnson and Trump to Reagan. And by making those comparisons, it becomes so obvious what the challenges are. Johnson, because of the way he became president, because of the assassination, was something that he didn't win an election. So there was a challenge for him as far as acceptance. And so it's the why they were the way they were and why Trump is the way he is. And it has a calming effect on me. Whereas when I watch the news, you go from CNN to MSNBC to Fox News.
It's my favorite thing to do.
Well, but you have to go through all those to come up with a somewhat of an articulation of what's real.
Right.
Because they all only give one point, one agenda, one perspective. And unfortunately, so many of our youth and so many people, not just the youth, are being taken advantage of, specifically with now what you can do with AI and what you can do. There's so much manipulation that's going on. And will we recognize it in time? Now, Elon Musk, since we were talking about Elon Musk earlier, saw the danger of AI because he was one of the original people that helped it create. And that's where he had a falling out with his partner, was he could see how it would be a real problem and needed to be controlled, because it's going to be a more perfect person than people are.
Yeah, that's why they named it OpenAI, because he wanted it to always be open and open source.
Correct.
And it's not open source.
And this is why, that's right, it's being used now. And this is why it's so important for him to get a man on Mars. He believes that there have been other species, other societies throughout history that died off because they eventually killed themselves. We worry about nuclear holocaust between Russia, China, Iran, and all. So if it destroyed the world and it made the earth uninhabitable, we would have another place to go. That's what drives him, according to him. I mean, I heard him talk about this once at one of his X launches. So it's a fascinating. So I'm curious, and that's what keeps me, I think, youthful and somewhat useful to CoVerica and the other companies I'm part of, is that I won't take things for granted. I don't see that the way we're doing things is the best way to do it forever. I mean, things change. And so that excites me. I don't see challenges as anything more than opportunities. You pivot. No matter what happens, you pivot.
Yeah. And seeing, challenges as opportunities is part of CoVerica's mission.
Yeah, that's right.
Whole ethos.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about Elon. You're talking about having dinner with Winston Churchill. These are all leaders that a lot of people know about. But who's like a good leader you think most people don't know about?
Wilberforce. Wilberforce started the abolition movement. Fascinating story. Amazing Grace was the book that I read here recently, and I think I mentioned it in our last podcast. But Eric Metaxas wrote the book on him because he would be forgotten. Hildebrand is another guy, as well as Bonhoeffer. These were two guys that in the 1920s were warning the world about Hitler, and they were ignored. They were before Churchill. And so these are fascinating people that I've read about. Hildebrand's book, Bonhoeffer's book, Wilberforce. These were people that are inspirational to me because they had a specific purpose, which mine is not that clear. I'm asking God, so is CoVerica what you wanted me to do and leave behind? But these guys each were dealing with things that would affect society. I mean, I don't know how many million people died because of the wars. I don't know how many poor black men and women were sold into slavery. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands. And Wilberforce, who was kind of a playboy, almost, kind of an aristocratic, became aware of slavery. Now, what was fascinating about slavery back in the 1700s, 1700s, was that in England, they didn't ever see a black person or slaves. Totally unaware. So somehow he found out about the trade that was going on for the sugar canes, where they would go to the chieftains in Africa, and they would, at first it started out the criminals, they would sell them into slavery. Okay? So they would say, well, these are bad guys, so let's make them work for their penance and so forth. And then they realized how much money there was. And then greed, the EBITDA people got involved and said, wow, we can make a lot of money here. So they didn't have enough bad people. So they started going after good people. Oh. And they'd take their families and then they'd ship them in these horrible ships. And so Wilberforce became aware of this. And because he was a Christian, it really got to him to where that became his absolute focus in life. And he was willing to lose everything for it. Now, the book goes through how all that happened.
But it sounds like he had a really easy life.
Up until then.
Didn't need to take this up as his mantle.
That's correct. Wow. And so at the end of his life, he got to, and in a small way, I get to see it too, that seeing CoVerica go on. Now we've got 70, 80 people that own stock in the company, and we're now down to 70% ownership of it. But he got to see, he's in Parliament and he's there, and everybody is saying that because of him, because of his endurance, slavery was abolished and it influenced America. So he is somebody that until I stumbled into it, I'd never heard of him. Same thing with Bonhoeffer, same thing with Hildebrand, and those are just three. There's a lot of, as you would call them, unsung heroes. I guess the reason why I mention people like that everybody knows about is so maybe people will start studying those people and it'll kindle in them a lust or a desire to learn more about what made us who we are. America is the light on the hill. America is the greatest experiment that's ever been created. And yet we've allowed a lot of people to just tear at it and say, what's wrong with it? Well, let me give you, boys and girls, a little tip about life. There is always stuff to bitch about, but there is always things to be grateful for. Simple things. Alistair Cook talks about never forget what you were designed to do. And one of the things he says, bounce a baby on your knee. How many kids Tony, was that movie Idiocracy?
Oh, yeah.
Where you have the intellectuals not wanting to have kids.
Yeah.
Whereas the people that don't give a flip are having kids. Yeah. And so it takes the trajectory to say that what is that going to lead to? Not a better, more civilized society. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that if you think that life can ever be won or you can get all these things or, there's, I remember in when the Mavericks won the basketball, won the world championship, they were interviewing James, what's his name? The famous basketball player. LeBron. Yeah. LeBron James. He looks dead at the camera and he says, you won it. You're to be congratulated. You've done a beautiful job. But tomorrow it starts all over again. Okay? In other words, you'll never get to the point that you can spike the football and things are good.
Right.
There's always tomorrow. And what I tell Chris, now that he's running the Alliance, I said, Chris, I know you're hyper-focused on these problems in front of you, but even when they're settled and solved, tomorrow you're going to have the next set of problems. And it's the journey. It's not the destination.
Right.
Yeah. I keep imagining this world where I build the perfect Salesforce ecosystem. No new tickets come in, but I know there's always going to be.
Yeah. And there's tomorrow.
Things. Yeah.
Things keep changing. And so you can either embrace it and enjoy it and get to where you can remove, ultimately the expectations that it's going to always work, because it won't. Garrett said this once, and it was the first time I heard it from a technology person saying, listen, I'm actually excited when it works. And that was something I had never conceived of, because I was the landline or the TV that had 3 channels and that's all you had.
Right.
And now there's so much that finding anything can become problematic. Well, so so when things work, be thankful.
Yeah.
Because it won't work for long.
I'm gonna. I think this question was channeled to me through Heidi. She put something out in the ether, and I picked up on it. But are the house renovations ever done?
No, of course not. Of course not, because it's like okay, let's take the human body. The things that I'm having to do for my health today are not what I used to do.
Right.
I mean, a young kid doesn't have to worry about nothing. As you get older, you start having problems. Okay, with a house, just look at a deserted neighborhood. What happens? The earth reclaims it.
Right.
It decomposes. So I was talking to, I think it was Gary Saunders the other day, and he's saying, I need to change out all of the, like you had the leak in your toilet.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you had preventative maintenance,
right,
it may not have happened.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like in our house in Florida, and I will admit to what she's talking about, that the house in Florida, we've had the same people lease the house. This will be their 6th year in a row, but they were getting ready to leave. They were saying, it needs to be updated. Well, that's a nice way of saying there's a lot of problems with the place. So Heidi and I went around the house and we couldn't believe there was some mold in areas, some of the water leaks, because we had repaired the roof several times, but there were leaks had done damage. So I'm guilty of the while we're at it syndrome, which is, well, while we're at it, so we replaced the roof, we're remodeling, we gutted the bathrooms to update them, and we just did it on our house. But here's the point, and Chris does a good job of articulating this. He loves to work on boats and cars and engines and stuff. And when he was a kid, I said, so maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you want to be a mechanic and maybe own your own shop. He says, no, Dad, I love working on that, because when I'm working on that, I can get rid of all the rest of the world. I'm just in the moment. So with me, the remodeling is, one, if you hold on to real estate long enough, it's going to make money if you're in the right area. Okay. So all the things that we've done in the building here and on our different houses, I'm going to get paid back on what I did. So it's not like something that you're going to eat and lose, like a great meal or a $1,000 bottle of wine. It's not like that. But I get great joy out of it. I enjoy it. Now, Heidi doesn't. So therein lies the friction.
Gotcha. All right. Here's a light one. Best song lyrics ever written.
Oh, gosh. That's what a good question that is. Let me think about that for a second. I think that I think it's called the marriage song I think it's Peter, Paul, and Mary. And every time I hear it, I get choked up. It's talking about just the words to that song. I believe it's the marriage song. We could pull it up at some point, but it's talking about what is the reason to becoming man and wife? Is it love that comes? It's just the words on it are so powerful, because it's talking about getting married and having Christ present in the wedding. Why, when 2 or more together are gathered in his name, there is love. So that song really gets to me. And then there's, if we want to go on, certainly if we want to go rock and roll, Freebird,
Yeah.
That Leonard Skinner, I love that song. Heidi can't stand it because it's guitar. Most of Hendrix' work. I mean, Hendrix is why I gave up on trying to play lead guitar. I mean, right. I thought, forget it. Yeah. So there's a lot of songs that I feel really good about. But I went to the heavy side of that song. Chokes me up. The marriage song, I believe, is what it is. Did you look it up?
Yeah, I'll read a lyric. Well, a man shall leave his mother, and a woman leave her home. They shall travel on to where the two shall be as one. As it was in the beginning, is now until the end. Woman draws her life from man and gives it back. There is love. There is love.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff. But Freebird's pretty cool.
Love it. Charlie, you liked this one.
I did. Yeah, I was thinking of that one. Okay, so this is a question from Peter Thiel, who I actually don't know too much about. I just know he's some rich guy, right?
Yeah, he's a
Big,
tech investor,
influencer.
hedge fund guy,
Yeah.
but just brilliant mind. This is a question he likes to ask people.
Yeah, so it's what important truth do very few people agree with you on?
That we're not as important as we think we are.
Good answer.
That's a good one. When did you realize that? Or when did it become
Daily.
truth? Yeah.
It's twice this morning.
Probably, as I said earlier, when the whole world was collapsing from legal actions and betrayals and it has the effect of you realize you're just a pebble on the beach. You really, even if you are a critical component part of something, your days are numbered. And there was a movie with Jack Nicholson, Schmidt. What about Schmidt?
Oh, yeah. About Schmidt, I think is what it was.
About Schmidt. Anyway, here's a guy, and it really kind of lays this out. He is working at a company. He's worked there his whole life. He's been waiting for retirement. He has an RV, and he's going to take him and his wife and travel. And he's been so focused on work. He wasn't a very good parent to his daughter, didn't have a relationship with her. And then his wife dies before they take their first trip. So everything he prepared for went away. And so now he's lost. And so then he tries to rekindle a relationship with his daughter, and she's saying, that ship has sailed, Dad. I mean, you were not involved in my life. In other words, so everything that he thought was so critical and important truly wasn't. And so it's just an interesting dichotomy of life, is that you better realize that the people that you betray, hurt, step on, climb over, what you do to other people will eventually happen to you, without exception. Because you can't stay, Glenn said this, King Arthur must become Merlin for the system to work. Well, what was Merlin? Merlin was an advisor, a coach, because Merlin could no longer fight the fights that King Arthur could. So a lot of people don't think about their mortality or their living in the phase of life that they're in. And I see that a lot with people. Unfortunately, people that run and own businesses, a lot of them are not doing what they should be doing, and they hold on too long.
In that vein, you're someone that talks a lot about the finality of life. Are you afraid of death?
No, I'm really not. I just, the joke I like to say is I want to die like Grandpa in his sleep and not like the people in the car with him at the time. I want it to be quick. My dad did it right. He was having lunch with my stepmother in Savannah, Georgia, Mrs. Wilkes' boarding house, I believe it was. And he had, and it's kind of a funny story, he had fried chicken, believe it or not, and he was having his dessert and all that stuff, and then he just kind of choked, and they don't know if the choking caused the heart attack or the heart attack caused the choking, but he was out. And then Linda calls me up in the middle of all this, your father's dying. And while the 911 was coming, and then he subsequently died. And she says, and this is so sweet, she says, this is just like your father. He finishes his lunch while I'm still eating. Then he dies on me. Anyway, that was kind of a comic relief. But no, I don't. Now, I may feel differently if I get some protracted disease or something like that. But right now I'm thinking, I know where I'm going, and it's like being a Christian. If it isn't real, what a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be ruthless. I could be the EBITDA monster and make all kinds of money. It is that discovery that there is something much larger about life than me, that there is something beautiful about when people can be together and live together and care about each other. I was talking to my friend this morning. I remember as a kid, all of us Dagos would get together, in Ohio, screaming, hollering Italians, everybody's hollering, and it was just madness. But there was something special about family that is gone.
Yeah.
Everybody, all my closest friends, with few exceptions, don't live in Dallas. They've moved. People move. This gets back to the remote. So, we have the synthesis of Zoom calls, et cetera, but that's not a hug.
Right.
That's not sitting down and just doing nothing, watching the water together, smoking a cigar. Those things are what makes life so fabulous, is the connectivity of closeness with people. And we are lied to believe that all this other stuff matters, because it doesn't. All the tattoos, all the breast implants and Brasilia butts, and all, it's like, oh my God, what is that? Because you're still going to age.
Yeah.
The lip thing, you'll eventually look like Daffy Duck. I mean, it's just weird. But can't you love yourself for what you are, warts and all?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, this is the point that I've had. This is unusual, I suspect. I've had 3 people in my life that welcome death: my mother, my father, and my grandmother. My grandmother, when I was 15, told me she was ready to die. She was 86. And it freaked me out at 15. I said, how can you say that? When you die, the whole dynamics of our family will change. I knew even then that the get together with all of us Italians was going to end. And she says, well, Michael, there was a grocery store called Big Bear. Well, the Italians, she was born in the 1800s. The Italians would literally go to the market every day to get what they were going to prepare for the meal that day. Mm-hmm. They didn't have refrigeration. They didn't have all the
preservatives and
that's right.
Food is probably a lot healthier too.
Oh, it absolutely was. But they had other issues. So grandma would say, I can't walk to the Big Bear no more, because she couldn't walk like she used to. And she said, I miss my Ralph, which was Rodolfo, which was my grandfather. And then my Aunt Mary, who we called her Mary Miserable, we called her the Sarge. She was always screaming and hollering about everything. And she's screaming in the back. And she says, and besides, I got to listen to that every day. So she had a sense of humor 6 months before she died. My father, who's a very proud Marine, which I used to laugh about, because as he got older, he became more and more of a Marine. Linda said to him, once you put one more sticker on our car, I'm going to divorce you, because he was just, or I'm going to re-enlist you. But anyway, because that was a time in his life he was very proud of serving. But he also told me he wanted to die, because he had Parkinson's, he was losing his ability to walk, he would be in a wheelchair, and it was, he was very proud. He didn't want to live like that. And then my mother was probably one of the most remarkable. She was just under 95. She had dementia. She knew she had dementia. So she would come in and come out, and she had a stroke. Now, it wasn't such a severe stroke that she couldn't move, but she said, I'm done, and she quit eating. It took her 2 weeks to die. Mm. So I experienced with those 3 people that are very close to me, that I know very well, and none of them feared death, which, Now, the other part of it is there's a shelf life. All of my experiences will become somewhat interesting to future generations, but it's like nobody knows who Wilberforce was. You start looking at people in history, and there are some people that will be statues if they don't tear them down. statues of them, but they're no longer remembered.
Mm.
So clearly this isn't it. So why is there this life the way it's laid out? And that's why I say, no, I don't fear death.
Gotcha.
I've had a good life.
Good.
Heidi doesn't like it when I say that, by the way.
Yeah.
Why doesn't she like that?
Because she knows that she will spend years by herself. And we have friends that have lost their spouses. And when you're as close as you really can be realistically, losing that partner, now you're facing the world by yourself and you have the memories. And so friends of mine that have lost their spouses, because usually, now this is unusual. Usually it's the men that die before the women, but I know of Heidi's mother died at 75, and Andy, her husband, is in his 90s now. Paul Kiesling lost his wife. Ralph Heffelman lost his wife. And experiencing life with them post the loss of the love of their lives, it's not all morbid. It's not like they hate their lives anymore. It's having to learn to live life at an older age is more difficult because your kids are grown and gone. They have their families, and you don't want to be a burden to them. And your friends are now dying off too. And so it's kind of like there's a season. We're not meant to live forever.
I had this conversation with Tiffany last night, and just came to the realization of like, I don't want to lose my traveling partner.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to say it.
I've got a lot left on here, so I'm trying to stick the landing on this because we're coming up on time.
Oh, we can make it part 2.
Yeah, maybe we pick a couple of these up because there's a couple of business ones I do want to get into, but let's leave it with this one. How do you want to be remembered?
As somebody who finally got it, the purpose of life and the meaning of life and living into it.
Yeah.
I pray that I was an example to how to live a quality life. Warts and all.
Love it. All right. I don't know of a better way to end it than that. So just want to give a quick update. We're going to skip recommendations for this one, but we want to thank you for joining us on this journey with Mike Sterlacci for what it takes to lead. We feel like this podcast, like many things in life, has a season, and we know the season for this podcast is coming to an end, at least the scheduled version of this. And so on our next episode, number 20, will be kind of our last planned and scheduled podcast. There may be future episodes, but only when there's something new learned or something that needs to be shared. And so with that said, we can promise you there's many things on the horizon for Mike Sterlacci, our team here at What It Takes to Lead, as they venture into new podcast and storytelling, and for all of our friends and family at CoVerica. So thank you again for listening with us here at What It Takes to Lead, and we'll be back soon for episode 20. Please drop us a line if you have a question or suggestions for episode 20. You can reach us at podcast@coverica.com or via X at WITTLEAD. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.